Yo, what up, Street Talks? Eric Kim reporting live from Hadong. 그치, 말똥? 예? 아니, 할래? 오케이, 아빠한테 줘? 오케이. 바스, 눈소이. Oh man, it's so nice here. Okay, so quick beep beep. A quick turbo thought I had about minimalism. So why minimalism? What is minimalism? Etc. etc. Okay. Okay, my 동자유님. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. So so the first thought I had is minimalism is essentially kind of like elitism 2.0, is that you could only actually afford to be minimal or minimalist if you're rich or you got the money for it. So this is actually the irony, is that poor people tend to hoard things and rich people tend not to, because in theory, if you're rich, right, or you got money, right, you could afford to just rebuy it if you actually really need it. So probably the smartest taxi Uber driver that we met while in Vietnam. So me and Cindy were going to the airport, and I think the guy was trying to like convince us to give him a big tip or something like that. And then like me and Cindy were playing the whole like, oh, we're just poor students, we can't afford much, blah blah. And the guy is like, oh, I know you guys are lying. He's like, why? Because you guys have so little stuff. Only really rich people could afford to travel with such little stuff, because if you need stuff, you could just do it. 박수! 한이 행복해? 아빠도 행복해요. Oh, random thought. Muji makes really good kids clothes. Okay. So minimalism then, sociologically speaking, there's a function of it that it signals to others essentially how rich you are, because only rich people could afford to be minimalistic. So for example, even in today's world, let's say you live in the States, right? Assuming that you're not insanely poor recent immigrant, right? To live without a car or to not have a car in America is actually a sign of wealth. It's either a sign that either you live in SF, New York City, yeah, where it's just like super unpragmatic to live without a car, or if you live in somewhere else and you don't own a car, like, because even like super poor people could afford cars, like a used car, like a cheap ass used car. In the States, for the most part, let's say I'm just talking for people who don't live in SF or New York. Only people who take the bus in America are like super poor, like 버스 능소이. If you're so poor that you can't afford a car in the States or a used car, it's actually a sign that you're super poor. But anyways, because for the most part, like pragmatic, 이거 봐. Boo. Seneca's looking at the back of my GoPro. Actually has a reflective light. That's pretty funny. But anyways, so and this is the funny thing that Americans are like, or Europeans or people who are not, critique Americans like, oh, y'all addicted to cars. I'm like, have you tried living in LA or Orange County suburbs without a car? It's like, it's hugely unpragmatic. And we're just lucky right now, we're just kind of chilling at Cindy's mom's house, so we're just borrowing her car. Yeah! 행복해요? 일로 말똥이! 일로 말똥이! Okay, 사랑해요. 아빠도 사랑해요. Okay. Also, I kind of like this idea of BOGO, while Seneca's just playing, tossing rocks into the neighbor's pond, I could just, another thought that I have about minimalism creativity is just turn off your iPhone, hide it in a drawer, and insofar much as you can, use it as little as humanly possible. Even a funny thought I had too was maybe it's a better idea to just get the Apple Watch Titanium and get a cellular connection so someone could call you in case of emergencies, and just don't own an iPhone. It's like a random thought I had. But anyways, so so the minimalism becomes kind of the Novu flex. Like, even the funniest thing was when I told people that I didn't own a phone, because, you know, I lived in Vietnam and went off the grid for like 2 years, then got rid of my phone, no phone. People were just so like shocked. so in America, if you don't own a phone, people are like, what, you don't own a phone? Like, even really poor people, like everyone could afford a phone in America now, right? Like, even poor people could afford an iPhone Pro. Just do that, you know, the Apple Gucci, just do the Apple, you know, pay $30 a month and then also the thing that's a little scammy about Apple now is they kind of feel like those like cheap, like quick money loan shark places, because, you know, essentially you buy the newest iPhone Pro and, you know, pay $30 a month or whatever indefinitely. It's kind of not a good idea. Even my most rich, successful friends, they all just use iPhone SEs, not an iPhone Pro. I think the iPhone Pro is only for poor people because it keeps you poor. And actually, the funny thing too is that the irony is that actually, if you're rich, one doesn't seem rich because think about it this way. If you had already used all your money on all these expensive things, you have less money in the bank. So for the most part, the ultimate sign of richness or wealth, or the, you know, measure is how much cash, US dollars, you have in the bank account, liquid cash, either your checking account or your savings account. So this is the funny thing too. Let's say you have, you know, all the expensive cars and stuff like that, and I mean, okay, so let's say you have $500,000 in your checking account or your savings account, right? So, hello, my 뚱이 행복해? 행복해? 아빠도 행복해요. 오케이, 하늘이 큰 돌멩이. 큰 돌멩이 찾았네. 이거도. 예, 잘했어요. 오케이, 던져봐. 던져봐요. 참 잘했어요. 이거 던져봐. 박수. Yeah. So let's say you have $500,000 in your savings account or your checking account, right? The second you go out and buy the Lambo, right? Let's say you buy the quote cheap one. Let's say you buy the Huracan, right? $250,000. The second you buy it, boom, like, yeah, boom. Suddenly your money goes from $500,000 to $250,000, right? Or let's say, you know, I don't know how much it costs, but let's assume that a Rolls Royce is $500,000, right? So let's say you have $500,000 in your savings account. 그치, my 똥. That's how Hanri says 물. Okay. So let's say you got $500,000 in your savings account. The second you go out and buy the Rolls Royce, you have the Rolls Royce. You shouldn't have. But you no longer have the $500,000 in your savings account. But let's say, you know, so you buy the brand new Rolls Royce for $100,000. Let's say you want to resell it for some reason, and then boom, you might only get $250,000. I think the second you drive a Rolls Royce off the lot, probably you lose at least half of its value. So and then, but camera? Look at how he loves to play my Rico. 그치, my dog? Yeah. 던지 마. Okay. 하늘이, 이거 눌러서 사진 찍어. Yeah. Walk. Okay. 아빠한테 줄래? Yeah. 상? Yeah. Oopsies. 부르지 마요. The other day, Seneca accidentally erased all of my reformatted my SD card. That's him. 감사합니다. He accidentally reformatted my SD card and lost all my photos. So it's like, gotta be careful. Gucci my thumb. Yeah. So actual. 오, 누군가? 예. 하늘이 아빠 어디 있어요? 하늘이 어디 있어요? 하늘이 돌멩이 어디 있어요? 돌멩이 다 여기 있네. 헤헤. 와, 메가 돌멩이. 오케이. 두 손. 들을 수 있어? 와, 슈퍼 메가 돌멩이. 예. 이렇게 던져봐. 이렇게 던져. 퐁크. 메가 돌멩이. 예, 던져봐. 와, 슈퍼 메가 하이퍼 스플래시. 참 잘했어요. A funny life thought that Seneca's taught me about life. No two rocks are the same. He loves splashing the rocks. I think one day he'll become a Freemason. But yeah, so actually it's better to hoard US dollars, liquid cash, and Bitcoin than buy anything. 그치 말통. 또또 볼래? 오케이, 또또 보러 가자. 오케이, 가자. Okay. The reason is it's kind of like what Nassim Taleb says about an anti-library is a book, like unread books in your shelf are actually more useful than the books you've read because there's the possibility of future utility. So actuality, the having US dollars in your bank account or liquid cash or Bitcoin, whatever, it's actually more useful to not spend it than to spend it because of some sort of potentiality or future utility. And also just something it's funny because I'm not like a minimalist because it's somehow more virtuous or whatever. I'm just so insanely picky that nothing is ever good enough for me, and therefore I don't like to buy nothing because nothing ever feels worth it. The only things I bought that feel worth it. 꽃. Yeah, 이뻐요. 이렇게 던져봐. Yeah. Okay. Parkour. Yeah. The only things that I've purchased that I ever felt worth it, these Vibram 5-finger shoes. Actually, these Lululemon licensed to train shorts, great for traveling and stuff like that. These Lindbergh glasses that I got, I think I got it in Calcutta, like in India, like almost like a decade ago. It lasted me until then. iPad Pro, the new iPad Pro is out too, which is cool. My Ricoh GR3X, right? That's pretty much it, right? And so for me, all I need is pretty much, I feel like all I need is an iPad, a Wi-Fi connection, my Ricoh GR3X camera, and also this GoPro that I'm recording this on. This is the 10, I think the 11's out. But besides that, like nothing's really worth it. So essentially, my ideal is to own as little few things as humanly possible, but then to just hoard a bunch of liquid cash and, don't buy a house and, none of that silly nonsense or a car. Like even cars, I love cars and car design. But for me, a car is kind of more of a concept and a design exercise than the actually wanting to own it. So even a pro tip, something I've been doing is, I love the Lamborghini designs. I don't feel like I actually need to own one, nor would I probably, I would not wish a Lamborghini on even my worst enemy because, imagine how expensive it is to change the oil on that thing. And no matter how rich you are, even if you're a trillionaire, nobody likes to spend money on a $1,000 oil change. Toto 사랑해요. Yeah. Toto is Hanu's way of saying cat or objects. Toto, 눈 거이. 한이 행복해? Yeah. Okay. So essentially oh yeah, so also maintenance. I was actually thinking about it too. So even when we were in Cambodia and Phnom Penh, and there's like this fancy gym called The Place. Imagine like an Equinox for Cambodia. At the front is a sign that says no bodyguards and no guns and firearms. So can you imagine if you're driving around in the Rolls Royce or driving around the Rolls Royce or the Lamborghini, how paranoid and anxious you are that like some rando dudes will just like, you know, block your car, shoot you up, and then want to jack your car, right? So in actuality, if you were truly a really trillionaire, rich person, whatever, you actually don't want to attract attention to yourself, because apparently a lot of rich people are paranoid for getting kidnapped. So, you know, you're driving around in the Lamborghini Urus, probably not a good idea, because all these random people will try to follow you and then jack you, right? But anyways, so then maybe ideally the best car to own is kind of the most luxury low-key car. So even like a Lexus, because at this point, I mean, let us not forget that the Lexus is just an expensive Toyota Camry. But you know, people seem to really like them, or like new Hyundai Genesis. Even nowadays an Audi doesn't seem that luxury no more. So what you want to do is you want to stay as low-key as humanly possible, but you know, assuming that while you're driving you don't want to get car sick, then you spend more money on a car. But anyways, so for me, minimalism is kind of more of a pragmatic aesthetic. It's kind of like, I think minimalism is all about just being implacable, meaning nothing could please you. So I would just recommend, you know, spend lavishly on things you really care for, and if it's not insanely good enough for you, just don't buy it.